Next on Parents Corner, a conversation about STEM. Thank you for joining us for another edition of Parents Corner. Today, we have STEM teacher Josh Webster here with us. Josh, I am so glad you could come and visit.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, so we want parents to sort of get an idea of what STEM is all about and what Triple E is all about. But let's start by can you just tell us a little bit about yourself and how you ended up being a STEM teacher?
Sure. I have been a teacher for 21 years. I've taught second, third, and fifth. I've been with Anne Arundel County the entire time. What got me into STEM would probably be all the lessons that were not your typical lessons in the classroom. The exciting lessons that you could see in the kids' faces, they would remember for a long time to come. I mean, personally, it was a interaction with a female student that I had that needed more time, more assistance, and in the classroom, she would come up and say that I was always taken away by this student or that student, or I needed a Band-Aid or something. So we worked throughout the year, and this is probably about 6 years ago. We worked throughout the year to try and solve that problem that typical teachers encounter with all the daily
So
ups and downs.
she needed more of your time.
She was struggling with math. She needed
Oh,
more
okay.
assistance, and it seemed like every time someone needed something, I had to go get a nurse's pass or something. So we sat down for the better part of a year to come up with some different ideas, moving things around, making central locations. And we talked about how her father was a carpenter. He had a tool belt that helped him. And we slowly built a few different prototypes of what has come to be my tool belt that I actually brought it.
Oh, we'd love to see it.
So this is where that took me, the encounter with this student. And this is probably the third iteration, which is the third trial. Over the time, we found out that some things needed more than others, and it was this that probably really drove me to say, maybe there's something else that really, truly interests me. So I have worn it so much that this one is worn out. I actually have a new one because the belt buckle broke on this one. But
So you created that.
we created that.
We created.
So,
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, I did the sewing and the construction, but it was her and a few other students that said, you know, this is what takes it away. This is where we lose time. So we've slowly put bits and pieces, and I wear it every day. So,
Right.
and that was 6-ish years ago.
So basically, what you're saying is that you felt like, wow, I would like to work with students where I've got more time and we can really think through problem solving.
Yeah, it was problem solving. It wasn't your typical math lesson, English lesson. It was solving a problem with what we knew.
Right.
And that's the answer we came up with, and it's worked ever since.
Awesome, awesome. So, so STEM, there's STEM, and then there's Triple E. Can you sort of explain? Because I honestly, I know a lot of parents don't know, and I honestly, as much as I've heard about it and I've actually worked with you, I still don't completely understand how all of this works together. So, if you could just give us a little lesson.
And Triple E just stands for Enhancing Elementary Excellence. So it's giving kids another avenue, whether it be music, art, PE, now STEM, there's world culture and language, there's other avenues, but it's adding to the education they're already getting in a different way.
All right.
So.
And so for some kids, that's really, really important, right? I mean, I think it's probably interesting for all of them, but for some kids, that's what keeps them interested in school.
It's actually kind of comical because I have many parents that'll come up and say, if I would have had this in school when I went to school, things may have been different.
Yes, okay.
So that makes you feel good because you're doing something that you can see parents have an interest in. They may not have had an interest in certain things in aspects in school before, but this is touching those few students that don't fit in quite with that certain niche. So, and as far as STEM goes with the county, I think the biggest misconception is parents always say, oh, STEM's the next best thing, but they can't really explain what STEM is other
Right.
than the acronym science, technology, engineering, and math.
But it's
STEM
more
is,
than that.
STEM is really problem solving
Okay.
and using science, technology, engineering, and math, just like my tool belt, to solve real world problems in everyday life.
And so that's why it's called STEM in society, right?
Yeah, I actually am not STEM. I am STEM in society. So we
Okay.
look at societal problems, whether it be school, county, state, country, whatever it is,
Okay.
and we pick on those deficits to try and overcome and make the world a better place using science, technology, engineering, and math.
All right. So even though these kids are in elementary school, they're thinking about these issues and how they would solve. Can you give us an example?
Oh, yeah. So
Maybe something you're doing now.
I might have to
don't
come down here.
know.
My fifth grade students came to me in November and said that some of them said that during classes they're connected by one hall, and that class time when they're reading can get loud. Not that they're not doing what they're supposed to, but one class might be doing a guidance or a teamwork activity. Another class is silent reading.
Okay.
So just the interaction and the class setup wasn't conducive to make everyone's lesson the best. So
I love that they're thinking that. That's awesome.
so we said, well, what could we do? We could build a wall. We can't make anything permanent, but
Right.
maybe we can fix something quickly
Mm-hmm.
to help out this year. So right now they're using structure and function, which is one area that they're focusing on, to design a movable temporary system to cut down on noise. So they're researching sound waves, how they work. They're researching
Wow.
suppressors, what stops sound more than others. They're researching structures, movability. All of that stuff comes together, and then they create a prototype, which is a smaller version of the finished product that they see as in
Okay.
the future. And they get to work through that. And then the nice thing is they work in teams.
Mm-hmm.
So you might have some students that might be more gifted at writing, and they could do an advertisement for the activity.
Right.
You have other kids that are good with building and hands-on, so they typically come up with the structures.
So they're using each other's strengths. In
They
the
have
right
to work
way.
together. So
I
that's
love
one of
that.
the
That's so
aspects of
important.
STEM, is
Okay.
that they work together to solve the problem, because in the real world, very few
We have
jobs are
to.
isolated. So it's also helping them be empathetic of others and see strengths and weaknesses and how they can help each other.
So that brings me to, there are some values associated
Yeah.
specifically with STEM. So can you tell me, you don't have to recite the values, but I'm assuming you've already touched on one of the working together.
Yeah, empathy. It's play and learning. So really, the county stresses taking all of your knowledge,
Mm-hmm.
everything you have, and not streamlining it to, oh, we're doing a math lesson, let's just focus on math. We're doing something.
Cross-curricular.
What
piece of
can we
research.
do
Yeah.
to pull all of our knowledge that we've learned throughout the years to overcome this problem?
Mm-hmm.
To truly be lifelong problem solvers, to help not just yourself but others overcome those problems.
Interesting, interesting. Because you talked about writing, you talked about research, you talked about building.
Yeah, it's really, and I think just most adults hear STEM because it's all you hear is the media and all this stuff, but it's so much more. So it really isn't STEM, it's solving real world problems using those aspects, science, technology, engineering, and math. Because we want our next scientists, our next engineers, our next whatever, to be able to look outside the box and truly use all of their learning to come up with a new solution. I mean,
Right.
we know that most solutions in the world don't even exist now.
Right.
My pre-K kids are some of the funniest ones because they really don't know any better, so what they come up with is comical, but a lot of the times it's relevant. So, and they have to understand that not every answer is going to work, but if you don't try it, you'll never know. So if it fails, and we do an iteration, which is just a retry to fix something that isn't working, or maybe there's one element of something that isn't working.
So you're
we try
using
and fix it.
failure sort of as a way to learn, which is awesome.
They have to be used to failure.
Oh, that's so great.
Right now I have another group of students that has bird feeders out in our courtyard because we're trying to attract birds so that the kids can see them. It's just a little grassy area, but there's no life out there. Nothing
Right.
is out there but grass. So they had to research birds, different types of birds, find out everything they could about the birds, and then they're going to take that and build a bird feeder that is conducive to that environment and will attract the most birds. And it's funny because they'll come in and look out the window and they get all excited because there's a bird in a bird feeder.
Right.
And they had to beat the elements. So I have some bird feeders that are on the ground because they weren't waterproof. I have some bird feeders that are on the ground because they weren't windproof. So the kids try to fix them.
So there was failure there.
Oh, there's lots of failure, but the successes are the ones that really get the kids excited to fix what didn't work in theirs before. So.
Oh, that is so cool. That's so
Yeah.
cool. So I know from having worked with you before that you're not only in the classroom, you're there after the day ends
Yeah.
because you do some clubs. So can you tell me about some of the clubs?
So the first year there, and I've been a STEM teacher for 3 years, the first year there, there was an interest from a group of students after one of our projects of me sewing part of their project together that they had an interest in sewing. So one of my clubs, probably the most popular, is Sewing Club for boys, girls, 4th and 5th grade students.
And you get a decent mix too of boys and girls.
I
right?
have, yeah, it's
Yeah.
the most popular. It's hard because I have to turn a lot of them away. I've collected a lot of sewing machines over the years. But to watch them not only make something for themselves, but then try and help a sibling or someone else. I had a student last year make a bear for a younger sibling because they were having a hard time sleeping at night. So we learned how to sew
problem solving.
bears to
Yeah.
help those kids. So yeah, it's funny watching them take something that I would have overlooked and be interested in it, which they don't do as much sewing in the middle school, I think, and that's where my mother had taught me, and I learned in the middle school. So.
Right, right. And I remember us talking about how some kids didn't know how to sew a button.
Yeah.
You know, so I just thought that was so cool because I remembered that from, I think, kindergarten. I learned how to sew a button,
Yeah, and the
but that was a long time ago.
Parents were very happy that I had taught them. That was the first lesson to sew a button on.
Right.
So some of the kids were cutting their parents' buttons off so that they could sew them back on.
I love it.
So.
Oh, no, we don't have too much time left, but I know there was another, is there one more?
So I have robotics also.
Okay.
It was brought to my attention that there was a school in the county that had received all of these motorized robots that are programmed by a TI-83, which is a college calculator, a graphing calculator. And Chris Hanks, my supervisor, had brought it up to me that she had these. Would I be willing to try and incorporate them? And I guess she knows that I really don't say no too much.
Right,
So
right.
we put them in, and it's been the second year, and the kids have what they call Robot Wars, where they have to try and program it to get to a golf ball before someone else. And they spend hours at home, and it's really rewarding because at the end of the year when they actually succeed, jumping up and down and screaming over
Right, I remember.
2-second track. So.
But it's exciting.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
exciting, and
It's very
it,
exciting.
like I said, it gets them to want to be a part of school.
Oh,
And it's something it's fun, but they're really learning too. They don't even
Yes.
know it sometimes.
No.
So, all right. Well, thank you so much for coming. It was
thank you.
really great to see you. Having taught with you before, and hopefully I know I learned something. So I'm sure that all of our parents did as well.
I hope
and
so.
I'll be asking their kids what they learned in STEM. See you next time, and thank you for joining us for another edition of Parents Corner.
I'm Corporal Gamble with the Anne Arundel County Police. In regards to school safety, there are certain items that are not allowed in school. Weapons, anything that can be construed as a weapon cannot be brought to school. Things like switchblades, knives, anything with a sharp point, fingernail files, guns of any sort cannot be brought to school. Also, illegal drugs, prescription drugs, unless they are issued by the health room, cannot be brought to school. Tobacco products of any sort, alcohol, anything of that nature is not something that you can have in school.